right, hello. Welcome everybody. Brie Sodano here. Today we are going to be working on scarcity. So this presentation should probably go between like 30 and 40 minutes today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what scarcity is, because scarcity is much more than just a mindset. Unconscious scarcity will fuck up your money flow probably worse than almost anything else. And scarcity, interestingly enough, can also get into our time and our energy resources as well. So I'm going to explain those things to you. And then I'm going to give you what you need to be able to identify scarcity. And I'm going to teach you 5 different tools to either move through it or work with it. So that is what we're doing today. If you are watching and you want to come to these presentations live and have the opportunity for like the Q's and the A's that happen at the end, you can go to my website, www.cashconfident.com/subscribe, and that will take you to my email list, because every week we do a call, like, we do a presentation like this. So you are just welcome to join. All right, so what is scarcity? So the way that I look at scarcity is that there is lack and there's fear of it. That's like the energetic combination. And so lack in and of itself, people really talk about lack like there's something wrong with it. But what I find is that in creating an abundant life, there's a lot of curation. There's a lot of, I want this, but I don't want that. And I think that well-placed lack in our lives is beautiful. And what I mean when I say well-placed lack, I mean like the open space that's in our calendars, like not having your countertops full of shit, not having an immediate need for every dollar that comes in, right? Where you're like, oh, I have money and my needs are smaller, right? So it's like you get to just chill out a minute, right? There's not everything's so full, right? You have time in your calendar. So there's abundance in your calendar and there's lack in your calendar. There's the curation of goods. So you have what you want, but you don't have what you don't want, right? And so when we fear lack, when we think about the time that we don't have, the energy we don't have, the money we don't have, and that creates a fear response, that's going to be what I'm talking about when I'm talking about scarcity. We have 3 primary resources in our lives. And when I'm talking about primary, it's almost like primary colors. So you know how, remember in school we learned like, what is it? Yellow, red, and blue are the primary colors, and you can turn all the other, on the little circle of paints. Those 3 colors basically turn into the rest, right? And so we have 3 primary resources in our lives: time, money, and energy. Now, if you take time, money, and energy and you put that into a college degree, you'll get a college degree. If you put time, money, and energy into having a beautiful house, you'll have a beautiful house. We put these qualities of energy into something, and that's how essentially we create. And so I want to point out that scarcity travels between these 3 primary resources very, very quickly. It doesn't take long for scarcity. Like if you're feeling that time scarcity, that urgency, it won't take long before that's into your energy or into your money. It's really probably 3 decisions right away, right? And so let me just give you a quick example here. But let's say you're running late, right? So you have a shortage in time. So, and then you drive to work and you're white knuckling it. And whenever I drive somewhere and I'm feeling like I'm running late, I'll end up expending a tremendous amount of energy just driving. Like when I'm not, like I could just cool out and put on like some, 1998 Michael Jackson and sing myself a song. But instead I'm going to drive like a crazy person. Well, maybe not like actually like a crazy person, but I'm gonna be bothering myself, right? And so now we're watching that scarcity get into my energy, and then I'm gonna buy myself lunch because I was running late, so I didn't pack one, right? And now that extra expenditure is in my money. And so when we live a life, in my book I call it busy, broken, exhausted, right? We talk about that, and it's because that's what it's like when scarcity gets into all 3 of your primary resources: busy for time, broke for money, and exhausted for our energy resources. And so I'm going to do this presentation. And also, if you want to know more about what I'm talking about here, my book is also a great resource. It's called Cash Confident. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, places where books are sold. So let's talk about this fear and how this shows up for us. So the first thing that I want to really explain about scarcity is that the way that our brain and body kind of communicate this is that your body receives the signal of scarcity is really threat of starvation. And so if you've ever really gone down the rabbit hole of scarcity, you could probably notice that your body feels real freaked out. Like your body, like you can really get yourself into a full tiz around this. And it's just because the way that those thoughts, the neurochemical cocktails that your body receives, is more or less like, dude, we're going to starve to death. There's not going to be Wi-Fi. We're going to rot in the woods. Like it's very, very drama. And so when that happens, the prefrontal cortex stops getting as much glucose, which is what you need to think, and all of that energy gets redirected to your body. And so when I've had clients in an extreme state of scarcity, they're generally going to be like writhing. They're going to be like, I just want to do something. So this place, and maybe just throw a comment in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever worked yourself into like such a froth around scarcity that you like can't really think too clearly, but somehow you just want to do some things. You just want to do something. And those actions that we take from these places of scarcity are generally gonna be, I call them like some real what the fuck choices. Like when you're in the moment of scarcity, it's gonna make sense why you would do such things. But then afterwards, you're gonna look at that and you're gonna be like, huh, literally, what the actual fuck was I doing there? One time, I'll tell you guys, I'm gonna just confess this story to you, and then I'm going to get into how to start to recognize. But one time I was, this was before I had this business. I was broke. I had like, almost no money in my bank account. I had just switched jobs. And like, when you switch jobs, there's a couple weeks where you have to go like you miss a paycheck. And so, do you know what I wanted? I spent the last of my like bank account money to supplies to make my own cheese. Does it make sense? No. Was it cheaper? Definitely not. Did it taste better than grocery store cheese? No. Was there literally any reason why this could have made sense? No. But at the time, I was like, well, I'm broke. This is obviously Little House on the Prairie now. I need to start to create my own cheeses because I should not be buying luxury cheeses at the store. None of it made sense. But anyways, true story. The cheese did come out very okay. You can make mozzarella. It's not that hard, just so you know. In case you wanted to make cheese not from a place of weird scarcity, Little House on the Prairie nonsense, but you were just into that. You don't need that many ingredients, just so you know. Okay, all right, carrying on. So when I'm working with clients, right, and so many of my clients that I work with inside my Limitless Wealth program are scaling a business. And in scaling a business, you are for sure going to encounter scarcity. Actually, everybody's going to encounter scarcity. It's not just for people scaling a business. But what happens when we start making decisions from that place of unconscious fear is generally it's going to make a bigger and bigger mess. All right. So we really want to understand when we're in scarcity, what it sounds like in our mind, what it feels like in our body, because that's a great place to nip this in the bud and to shift directions. Now, I heard a metaphor today that I'm going to share with you because I think it's really, really good. So I want you to think about abundance and scarcity like light and darkness in a room. So abundance would be the light and scarcity would be the darkness. So a lot of times people are so fixated on scarcity that they try to get rid of it, right? But imagine if you were in a room and there was a candle on one side and the other side of the room was dark. Well, if you wanted to bring light to the other side of the room, you're not going to get rid of the darkness. You're going to bring more light to the other side of the room. All right. So metaphorically, that I think this really helps because a lot of times people are like, I want to get rid of my scarcity mindset. Listen, in all the years I've been doing this, I've been seeing clients and talking about money since 2013, and I've done investments and I've done cash flow work and I've helped people scale their businesses. And I've worked with people who are making very little money all the way up to multi-million-dollar business owners. I've worked with Olympians. And what I know for sure is that it doesn't go like a scarcity is a survival feature. It helps your brain to register how much, the resources that are available to you. And when you've decided that there's not enough resources, it gives you the energy to go get those resources, right? And so it's not something that you would get rid of. So what we really need to learn how to do is not focus on the darkness, but focus on the light and how to bring the light into the rest of the room, right? And I just want to point this out because a lot of times people get stuck in scarcity trying to get rid of it. And I'm like, it's not exactly how that works. All right. So, what I want you to, let's just start here and think for a second. So, what I want you to think for a second is just give yourself, your mind, the opportunity to go down the regular scarcity rabbit hole. So, for many people, they'll have a regular scarcity rabbit hole that they go down. And my scarcity rabbit hole is generally like, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to make enough money. So, now I'm projecting my scarcity into the future, right? And so, I'm saying, I'm not going to have enough money in the future. And then I create a whole bunch of problems having to do with this imaginary lack of funds that is coming my way, right? And so then it's usually like something's not going to be right in my business. I'm not going to be able to pay these things. I'm going to have to let things that I really use or value go, right? And so that's my regular rabbit hole. So I just want you to think, let yourself go down this rabbit hole for just a second because I want you to start to notice what does this feel like for you in your body, you know? And so for many people, scarcity is going to feel like a contraction somewhere. It's going to feel like a little bit of a fear response. Sometimes it will sit for people like a pit in the stomach or you know, a heaviness in the chest. Some clients have described it, they'll feel like a pain in the back, you know, like a lower back pain, or like a tightness there. And so whatever's coming up for you is I just want you to make a note of that because this is really important information because this is how your body, this is how you know that your body's experiencing that scarcity, right? And so that's as we get into our tools in a couple minutes, this is a really important part of this. And that regular rabbit hole of thoughts, I want you to pay attention to that regular rabbit hole of thoughts because if you can get from like sitting happily in your house to mentally moving to a van down by the river and within just a couple of minutes, what that means is that that thought pattern is really what we call myelinated. It's really like greased up. There's a fatty sheath on it, right? On like in your literal brain, but it means that that rabbit hole is you're used to sending thoughts down it. All right. And so you want to start to notice those thoughts because the faster you can redirect the faster you can redirect those thoughts, the less likely it is that the scarcity. So, scarcity is going to start in your mind. Chances are it's going to move into your body relatively quickly. It's going to get into your words. It's going to get into your actions. Now, by the time it gets into your actions, now you're taking creative, now you're putting actions to this. So now you're creating more and more scarcity. All right. What I want to say is having a thought of scarcity. It's very likely not going to fuck up your manifestations unless you're sitting around in it, you know, all day. If you have a thought of scarcity, it's going to be okay. But once you start taking actions from scarcity, now you're in your creative mode. Now you're using your creative power and very likely you're going to be creating scarcity. So the faster you can redirect your mind back to the light, back to abundance, the more that we can bring that candle around our lives and be like, "Oh, all right, okay." Or we can light another candle, you know, in this, you know, mental space, the less likely the scarcity is going to get into our words, the less likely it's going to get into our body, the less likely it's going to get into our actions. Now, one more thing I'll say is when the scarcity gets into the body and your prefrontal cortex, the laser focuses a bit, what ends up happening is your ability to perceive opportunities, your ability to perceive solutions to problem really gets limited because the way that scarcity works as a survival feature is it gives you like tunnel vision and a shit ton of energy. And so 10,000 years ago, when humans were hunting and gathering, that was great because it would give you so you'd be like, I'm hungry for dinner. And now I have a laser focus to go get dinner and a ton of ballsy energy to go get that dinner. And so it really, really served. But what I noticed today is that people's actions from this place of unconscious scarcity can be really, really problematic. And so I'm going to just go over some of these. Now I have five major ways that scarcity will show up in like behaviors. And this list is not complete. Every single person has their own little nuance things. And also if some of these problems don't relate to you, beautiful. These are just my observations. I just want to say that so that way I don't want to be, you know, well, anyways. All right. So one of the things that I'll notice that people do in scarcity is they will overspend, which sounds really interesting, but it's more like I better spend all this money on something good before I buy something stupid. Or it kind of will come from the place of believing that there's not going to be money in the future. So what this could look like is if you have a really great month in your business or you have a cash windfall and you're like, let me go to Costco and buy 8 years worth of tomatoes. Let me go buy X, Y, and Z. And so then we're going to spend all the money. And it's like the thought pattern of, I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not going to have money in the future. Well, then you spend all the money that you have, and then that becomes the truth, right? And so that's the way that scarcity kind of recreates itself. So if this is a behavior pattern for you, just make a note of it, and then you can start to put together, I'm in my, rabbit hole of thoughts and I feel whatever way scarcity feels for you. And then I'm going to go to the store. All right. Now, this is a place where you get to make different choices. So the awareness around this is the power here. All right. So the next thing that I'll see people do is the exact opposite. And that will be hoarding money and not letting money flow to like places it's legitimately supposed to flow to in an attempt to conserve cash. Now, I noticed this really much more with business owners. Business owners will, let's say, not pay on something to have the cash available for other needs. And again, it really stems from the belief structure that I don't have enough and that more's not coming. Right? And a lot of times we do put that fear into the future. And so it's just a really interesting thing. People will believe this happen. I see this in business. It's like, just because you can't see how your next client is coming in doesn't mean that they're not coming in. But a lot of times people be like, I don't see something in my pipeline, or I don't see people paying attention to me. So that means that they're not. And then they create all of this scarcity around it. Holding on to money that's supposed to flow is another way scarcity manifests. And this is generally going to create more scarcity in terms of fees, just the extra expenses of, in a worst case, you're going to see people with bad credit. They're going to pay more for literally everything for having done this. And sometimes it actually gets to the point, depending on how tight you squeeze that scarcity, you may actually not have the resources. And sometimes that really does happen. All right. So hoarding is another way that scarcity shows up in our behaviors. All right. Another thing that I'll notice, the third way that I see it, is a really interesting use of time or energy resources. So a lot of times when people are feeling that financial squeeze, they'll do really weird things with their time or their energy. So in business, this could look like me not hiring out things that really should be hired out. So it'd be me as a business owner doing low wage work, right? So I'm going to, let's say, let my VA take the week off and I'm going to do my own social posts or whatever, so it's like, I'm going to spend my time doing low wage work in an attempt to save money. But what I'm really doing is then I'm not pursuing the opportunities that could bring the big money in. All right. I'll give you a different example of this. At one point I had a client who was in a program of mine, and I talked to her, and she was in real estate, and there was like this, her market had really drastically changed. And she says to me, all right, well, I spent the whole day combing my expenses to find things to cut out. And I was like, you wouldn't have spent the whole day prospecting, making phone calls, shaking the trees. And when I said it, she was like, oh, that would have been a way better use of time. But anyways, so it's like she used an entire day to save $15 a month and shit that she could cut out of, like cut her Netflix. But in doing so, it's like she was focused on the trying to cut the expenses and not focused on bringing in the more. All right. So again, this is how more, and so now a problem. She had an income problem because her market had moved, like her market had, I don't know, there was just changes in the real estate market where she lived. Right. So instead of shaking the trees to potentially bring in the money, she was like miserly cutting the expenses. Right. So that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That wasn't the solution to solve that problem. And sometimes people will also feel that way do the same sorts of thing with energy. And I'll see people usually use, and what I would call, waste a lot of energy, worrying, fretting, planning for things that they don't want to happen, right? That's a big commitment of energetic resources that are going in the opposite direction. All right. And then there's two different, actually, let me go over another thing that I'll see is avoidance. So when people are in scarcity, I'll notice that's a great time for people to put their head in the sand. It's not a great time, but that's like, it's a pretty common response. They'll stop looking at their bank accounts. They'll stop reading their financial reports. They'll stop opening their statements. They'll stop doing it because it feels, every time they do it, it triggers that scarcity. It feels really bad to them, right? So avoidance of looking at the situation also comes up. All right. And the last way that I'll mention is an attitude of ambivalence. And this is kind of non-committal energy, and it's more of like an acceptance of a situation and not really wanting to address it. So it might be, sometimes I'll see people and this happens more if you've been in scarcity for a long term. Also, if you have a lot of scarcity in your social circle, I'll see more ambivalence, and it will be kind of more like everybody's got mountains of debt. It's the American dream, or nobody's going to get ahead, so why bother? Like, I'll never get paid what I want, why bother kind of vibes. Right? So there's like a lack of action around something. And sometimes it might even be like, I'm not even going to admit that I really want it. I don't really see it as possible. This is just like my lot in life. Right? So there'll be like like, I know that I want it, but I don't like want it bad enough to do anything about it kind of thing. So these 5 things are ways that are pretty common, ways that I see, I've been doing this for a while. So these are a lot of observations that I've made over the years. So what I would encourage you to do is start to notice, what do you do that's specific? All right. And I'm going to give you guys one that's specific to me that's not common. But when I'm in scarcity, I get mad at my husband for no reason. Literally no reason. He will have done nothing to have upset me, but I will just be like, you're existing. Why? But like, he's my favorite person in the world and he didn't do anything to bother me. So for me, I know that if I'm mad at Mike for literally no reason, chances are there's some scarcity going on for me that I might not be aware of just yet. Now, the reason I'm also telling you this is because, again, scarcity, because it's part of our survival, sometimes we're not super aware of it. Sometimes these things will be happening under the radar. Your mind will be being taxed by the stress or the worry about money or the lack of money. And you might not it might just be normal to you. It might not, sometimes we have to really start to notice these things. So for you, notice what else happens for you around scarcity, right? You might notice like heartburn, which again, not super common, but it's come up. Like you might notice other things for yourself. All right. Now, but what's cool, and we're gonna get to in a minute, is sometimes working with scarcity can really help us. It can really like boost us out of the situation. All right. So in a second, I'm gonna get to the 5 different ways that we can use, harness scarcity, use scarcity, work with scarcity, more or less move out of it. And what I want to offer to everybody is, so I have some spaces open in Limitless Wealth and some spaces open in private coaching. And so for both, to get into either of those levels of work, the way that my sales process goes, the way that I like to work with people is I like to just do an initial session with people first. And during that session, I call it a business building session, but sometimes for private coaching, sometimes people come see me and maybe they don't have a business or they don't have a business just yet. What we do there is we start to look at like what it is you want in terms of your money, figure out where you are, and then we can start to make the plan. Like, all right, well, I'm here. This is where I want to be. And there's a very practical plan from here to there, but also we look at things like where your mind is. And is your mind on board or is your mind in the way? Where's your emotional range? Is your emotional range plenty big to hold the thing that you want? Or do you actually have a lot of fear of your emotions? Is fear dictating a lot of your choices? We look at the energetics under things and we look at more or less like, are you as a person able to hold the level of success that you want? And so when we work together, we put together a really practical plan for how we're going to get from here to there. But we also put together like your identity plan, your personal plan for how you're going to get to here to there. And what's so interesting to me is that a lot of times when we're talking about growth, we ask all the wrong questions. If we see somebody, they made $1 million or they did this, we say, well, what did you do? What did you do? What strategies did you try? Like that's it. But what I notice is nobody ever asks, who did you become? What did you have to let go of in yourself? Where did your identity have to change? What habits did you have to change? Where did you, and so it's just interesting. A lot of times I notice that people get fixated on the mindset and they get fixated on the strategy when oftentimes there's some identity work to be done. There's emotional range work to be done. There's energetic work to be done. So anyways, if I'm really talking to you and you really want that kind of deeper approach, I will put up a link to book a strategy session with me. Normally they're $2,222. But you guys came live, so if you want to book it, it's 999. And then from there, if we want to work together, we can go from there, or you can just take your plan and execute it on your own. Both are fine. When it comes to learning to work with scarcity, the first and most important thing that we can do for this is to be able to identify it. And I'm talking identify what it sounds like in your mind, identify what it feels like in your body, like in your sensations, and identify how it shows up in your behaviors. Because when we're just learning to become observers, you might not have full observation of your mind. You might not have full observation of your body just yet, but you'll have observations of your behaviors, right? You'll be able to say, oh, I did that or I didn't do that. And so being able to notice what scarcity sounds like in your mind is going to help you. It's going to give you the skill that you need to be able to redirect those thoughts. Being able to move scarcity out of your body, also really important. And then noticing the behaviors. You'll have to do this before. So that way, when you're like feeling some kind of way and you want to go to Costco or you're feeling some kind of way and you're like, maybe I should just make my own curtains instead. That you'll be like, oh, all right, this is how scarcity shows up for me. Let me rethink this in a little while when when I'm feeling a little bit better, when I'm feeling more abundant. All right, so this is going to be the first thing that we do. And I kind of talked through this. So this is your work to do it. You're going to have to journal on this. What does scarcity sound like in my mind? What does it feel like? And then we just talked about some of the more common behaviors. All right. So then when scarcity is in your body, and I'm talking about acute level scarcity. So if you're having this kind of scarcity, generally this is the kind of wiggling out of my skin. When people are in acute scarcity, people really make interesting choices. And so if you know that you're having like more of a fight or flight response, more of a panicky response around this lack of money, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is get your heart rate up for a few minutes. And so that could be like running up and down I don't know, doing a few jumping jacks. However you do it, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. I'm not telling you this for like exercise purposes, but once you get your heart rate up over a period of time, your body is generally like, she did the fight or flight. She went and got the dinner, and your prefrontal cortex can start to come back online. So that's one of the things that we can do. If you really grew up in a lot of long-term scarcity, sometimes there's a little bit deeper work to do around the nervous system, but that's what I just gave you is okay. And like an acute situation, right? And so if you're really being like, oh, holy shit, I'm feeling a certain kind of way about this financial situation or this fear that I'm having, and you start to feel, go get your heart rate up. And that just helps your prefrontal cortex to come back online, And what I would say here is if that's what's going on for you, don't make any decisions for a little while. Like give yourself an hour or two before you make any phone calls, before you, open up any bank accounts, before you take out new credit. Like give yourself a minute. Like being in the throes of scarcity is not the best place to be making decisions or taking actions. So this isn't like a separate thing, but learning how to sit on your hands for a minute if you're in scarcity, like that's a skill to have. Being like, I'm not in the place to really make a decision on this just yet. Let me go for a walk. Let me move my body first. But again, that comes with the awareness, so that it really depends on your ability to identify scarcity. So what I'm going to talk about for the third thing that we can do, and this is what helps to rewire the brain, is just a gratitude practice. So gratitude is the frequency of having. It's the energy of having something and being grateful for it. So lack, and that fear of lack, is the energy of not having something, right? So most of the time people talk about money and all of the negative things about money, almost all of it is they're really talking about scarcity. It's usually not money that's causing any problems. It's the lack of money or people acting from scarcity. Once you start adding desperation into this, people can do fucked up things. So practicing gratitude is what helps to rewire your brain to go in a different direction. So like we were talking about before, most of us will have like a pretty common rabbit hole to go down where the mind is going to be like, ba, ba, da, ba, ba, you're going to have to move to a van down by the river. Right. And if you're new to personal development, or if you haven't done scarcity work yet, you'll find that for most of us, that they have a rabbit hole. Now, if you don't have a rabbit hole, fucking great. Don't go looking for one. Just want to say that. All right. So a gratitude practice. So what we're really doing with a gratitude practice is we're saying to our mind, we're saying, no, focus on the things that we do have. And the more that you focus on the things that you do have, the more that you're going to feel a sensation I would call like a warm and fuzzies. All right. So when we talked about the neurochemical cocktail of scarcity, that neurochemical cocktail creates a fear in the body, creates a contraction energetically, creates like a prefront, your brain shuts down, all this adrenaline hits your body. And so that's the energy of scarcity. When you're in the energy of gratitude, the energy of abundance, your mind opens up. You're going to be able to see solutions to problems. You're going to see opportunities. You're going to see things differently when you're in gratitude. And also the neurochemical cocktail of gratitude creates a feeling of more safety in the body, right? So if we were to really practice gratitude right now, after a few minutes, your state is going to change. You're going to feel different. You're going to feel that kind of warm and fuzzy. Now, another reason why this is so important is because when we actually get that money, when everything's going well, this is weird, but it happens to sometimes people will have. Gay Hendricks wrote a book called The Big Leap, and he really talks about upper limit problems. But what an upper limit problem really is when your life starts to get really good and your body's not used to feeling that mix of neurochemical cocktails on the inside, sometimes you'll do some shit to fuck it up so that way you can get back to where you've been feeling. So a gratitude practice basically gets your body more and more ready to hold good stuff. It like increases your capacity to have, essentially. So what I suggest for gratitude is if you're new to a gratitude practice, I would suggest writing it. Now, this is for a couple of reasons. One is because the way the focus goes, it lasts a little bit longer because you have to write. All right. Then the second thing is you get to read it back. Sometimes when you're really in scarcity, trying to redirect your mind can be difficult. And so having something to read can help to support those new neural pathways, even if your thoughts are a little like disjointed. What I would suggest for a gratitude practice is to find something. And listen, I want to say here too, a gratitude practice doesn't have to be about money. You can write your gratitudes about money and your financial situation, but if that causes you to feel some kind of way or untrue, it doesn't matter. You can write your gratitude practice about the beauty of your garden. You can write your gratitude practice about your love of stuffed olives. You can write your gratitude practice about your spouse. Like, it doesn't matter. All right. But what I would suggest is finding one thing and go deep on that gratitude practice rather than going vast and wide. So what the difference between this might be like, oh, I'm grateful for my house. I'm grateful for my spouse. I'm grateful for my cats. I'm grateful for my health. All right. That's going to be a very lip service kind of gratitude practice. It takes a very long time of that kind of practice to get the warm and fuzzy neurochemical cocktail to change. So what you want to do is pick one thing. So I could go deep on gratitude for my business, right? And I could say, oh, my business, has really been profitable from the beginning. And my business provides me XYZ, and my business has paid for this for me. And I get to do awesome things in my business. And I love serving people in this way, right? And I can go deep on that one topic. And that's going to, just to maximize our time. So what I like to do, if you're new to a gratitude practice, and I want to hammer this in for you. This is a practice. Knowing gratitude or being in gratitude once or having an attitude of gratitude is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a daily practice. And depending on because sometimes we get really stuck in a rut of scarcity. If you're in a rut of scarcity, maybe multiple times a day practice. And now the reason why this is so important is because when you do that practice, your brain sends out neurochemical cocktails, your body opens up. And so an attitude of gratitude does not do that for you. Practicing your gratitude for 1 hour a week, even if you do it all at once, isn't going to do that for you. It's getting used to that new neurochemical cocktail, and it's disciplining the mind. And disciplining the mind it's not something that you can do just once. It's like training a dog, or getting your kids to shut the fucking door. How many times have I had to tell your kids to shut the door? All the neighborhood children, I had to get them all to shut the door. All right. Anyways, I digress. So anyways, it's that kind of thing, right? So if you just tell the neighborhood children, close the door one time, do they close it? No, you have to tell them every time. So same thing. So this gratitude practice. So I just want to make sure that you guys have the realistic expectations of this. So if you sit down and write your gratitudes for an hour on a Sunday, it's probably not going to make the big difference. But if you do a few minutes a day, every day, your gratitude practice is going to be better. So this is another way that I like to do it, especially if you're a little bit more sciencey. So I like to set a timer and time how long it takes me to feel the difference, right? So I'll set it, and it's not like it's like more like a stopwatch. So I'll set the stopwatch and I'll say, all right, how long does it take me to get into gratitude, right? And so when I first started, it might take me 5 or 6 minutes. Now I can usually get that state change in a minute or two, right? And then I like to stay there. I'll keep my practice going, and I like to see how long I can do it if I have time, right? Sometimes you could just set it for 5 minutes and you'll stay in gratitude for 5 minutes, and that's fine. But if I have a little bit more time, I like to see how long I can do it before my brain starts bothering me about something else. And that's a good practice to know too, because it's just an extra layer of awareness. So that's that on the gratitude practice. So I want to say actually one more thing about the gratitude practice. So if you're feeling that acute sense of scarcity, a gratitude practice, give it a minute. That's not the time. A gratitude practice is a great way to start the day, is a great way to end the day. If you have a place and time where you feel a little bit neutral, you can go for, for a walk or sit with your journal or whatever. That's a great time for a gratitude practice. If you're really in the throes of feeling some scarcity, trying to write your gratitudes is just going to be like banging your face against the wall, like banging your face on a wall. It's not as effective. It just creates a lot of dissonance. Don't do it unless it works. I mean, you can try it. If it works for you, then fucking rock on with yourself. But for most people, they're going to feel like they're lying to themselves, right? And it just creates a discord. All right, so then the fourth thing that we can do is we want to learn how to redirect the thoughts from the rabbit hole. So when we were talking earlier, we talked about, all right, so what is, your brain's going to have a rabbit hole that it goes down from time to time. And so what do we do there? And so this is my favorite way to do it because it's very, very simple. So when my brain comes and is like, you're not going to have money down the road, I imagine that thought, but like I imagine it like a Charlie Brown thought bubble. I just imagine, do you guys remember those cartoons that like the little, and there was a bubble of thought? And so I'll just kind of imagine the thought there, and I'll just wrap it up in this bit of imaginary thread, and I'll clap it like a mosquito. And then I'm going to turn my face and I'm going to redirect those thoughts. And I'm going to say, and I might even go so far as to be like, that's a thought I don't want to be thinking. I'm going to choose to redirect my attention to thoughts of abundance. And I'm going to turn my head when I do it, because it just helps the subconscious mind start to like take the hint better. All right. Now, if you're not in a place where you want to be clapping imaginary mosquitoes, you could you could do it in your total imagination. I like to add the nonverbal. So I just kind of wrap the thought up. You can clap it, send it away, and redirect. All right. Now, again, I just want to set realistic expectations here. Mental discipline is a skill. It's an art. It takes a while. When I'm working with clients inside my programs, we spend a lot of time on mental flexibility, a lot of time learning different techniques to discipline our mind. And I want to talk about the difference between like redirection, because sometimes people will try digging in their psyche, like they could just dig up this idea that's going to, like if I just find this one stupid idea that somehow all my problems are going to go away, right? One time I even had a client say that to me. She was like, I thought for sure you were just going to like dig up this one idea and I wasn't going to have to like do any work. I was like, interesting. That's not how making money goes. There's generally like work involved. I like manifestation as much as the next lady, probably more, but I just, we want to not be delusional. So anyways, the mental discipline. So that's that little tool there. If you like that tool, if it works for you, cool, use it. And I'm telling you, you might use it 10, 15, 20, 50 times a day. If you're just getting started and you've never done any mental discipline work, you might use it 100 times a day. And I want you to know that it's working. Every time you do it, it's working. Every time you redirect your thought and you take control of your mind and you choose a better thought, it's working. And it might take you months, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Discipline, because your mind is going to be thinking a zillion thoughts, So catching the thought at the top of the rabbit hole, the faster you can catch the thought, the better off you're going to be. Because if you let your mind go, let's say 100 thoughts in the direction of scarcity, and I would say most of us are probably thinking 100 thoughts a minute. So if your mind starts down the rabbit hole of scarcity, your mind starts to, the thoughts are magnetic. They're going to attract other thoughts. So if you go a few minutes into the road of scarcity and your body starts receiving those signals, you could get really, really far into fear very, very quickly. So the goal here is the faster you catch, if your mind goes into scarcity, the faster you can catch it and redirect it, the better off you're going to be. All right. So that's the mental discipline practice. All right. Now, the fifth thing, which is an advanced, I'm going to tell you all advanced level things, but if you can't identify your scarcity, trying to harness it is going to be over your head. If you can't get out of a moment of scarcity in your body, harnessing scarcity is going to be over your head. This is an advanced level practice. So I just want you to also know that this is not beginner level shit. So if you have zero mental discipline, work on mental discipline before you work on harnessing scarcity. All right. Okay. So when you're in business, especially, generally speaking, you're going to have something that you can do to shake the trees. You can do to go make the money, right? And we always want to have that kind of available to us, right? And so it depends on what your business is. Sometimes it's going to be making cold calls. Sometimes it's going to be sending emails. Sometimes it's going to be doing whatever it is you do. So posting on the socials, everybody's got to know this for yourself. So the benefit of scarcity is that it has like a laser focus and it also is a ballsy energy. Like if you have to make sales calls. Now, I want to point out the difference because what I'm talking about here is consciously knowing that you're in scarcity and using that scarcity is very, very different than what I talked about taking action from scarcity before. When I was talking about taking action from scarcity earlier, when I was talking about the unconscious flavors of scarcity, overspending, hoarding, wasting time, ambivalence, avoidance, right? I'm talking about something very, very different here. When I'm conscious of this scarcity and I'm saying, oh, I'm feeling some kind of way, let me go get my resources that I need. That scarcity is a bonus. That scarcity is the energy to help me move through this situation. But you're aware of it. You're conscious of it. You're harnessing it. And then you're going to go do your phone calls. Then you're going to go do whatever else. All right. And you got to be clean with it, with no desperation or, but you're just going to be in the action taking mode. So if you feel that sensation of scarcity, you want to direct it toward getting the resources that you need. That's the move. So most of the time people are gonna, like when we look at it, overspending that's not getting the resources that you need. Well, it is, but it's backwards. It's saying, I'm not gonna have money, so let me go buy 8 years worth of tomatoes. I'm not gonna have money, let me stack up on this now. Right? So you buy the resources that you need, but it's from the place of scarcity. Hoarding says money's not coming in. Let me not spend this money, right? Wasting time says I'm not going to have money to pay my people, so let me take on all these tasks myself, right? Ambivalence is like nothing's ever going to change. Why bother? Avoidance is like I'm going to stick my head in the sand. But when we're saying, oh, I'm feeling short on resources, let me go do what's necessary. Let me go make my phone calls. Let me go to the networking events or whatever else. So it's harnessed. You're using it for what it's for. All right. So the thing that's really required here is that you have a plan, that it's simple enough that you can execute it while your prefrontal cortex is a little bit low, and that you more or less know what you're doing enough to be able to do this. Right. But that's the bonus. Right. So harnessing scarcity is a bonus because it's got a lot of courage, scarcity, and it's laser focused. The other thing that you can do is head into it. So you're going to face it. And I will tell you that this feels bad. This is good advice, but it will feel so bad. So if you're going to do this, you have to be willing for it. Because what will happen is I'm going to give you so I'm going to just explain it like this. So scarcity is kind of like a barking dog. So it's going to be like, cut your expenses, fire your people, da, 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 da. And scarcity, if it's unconscious, it's going to drive you to want to reduce, right? And when you go through it, that same barking dog is now going to be like chasing you, nipping at your heels in the direction of where you're going. And so facing scarcity while you're doing it, because you're going to move into that fear. You're going to face the fear, you're going to move into it. But in doing that, I mean, you are going to use your courage. And the thing about courage is courage just feels like fucking being scared shitless. People talk about it. Courage looks great. Courage looks great from the outside. You guys ever see like shows about firefighters and you're like, look at those mustached men running into that burning building. We're like here for it, to watch it. But to actually be the person doing the scary thing feels bad. So I just want to point this out to you because a lot of times it's like people will stay in scarcity forever because in the moment it feels better to bow to it. In the moment it feels better to cut your expenses. And now listen, if you have expenses that you're not using, that don't make sense, that are not part of your life plan, that are like sometimes cutting your expenses is a beautiful act of pruning. But I'm talking about when you're all frothed up and you're just feeling some kind of way and you're letting go of, because a lot of times people will want to let go of things that they actually use and value in their business or use and value in their lives. That's what I'm talking about. So when you head into that scarcity and then that scarcity is more or less is going to create a sense of urgency from behind you. All right. So that's the other thing that you can do is you're going to face the fear and you're going to move on. And you have to be willing for it to be wildly uncomfortable for a little while. And when I say a little while, depending on what you're doing and what you're working on, it might be uncomfortable for weeks. Again, I want to be really, really truthful. I find that a lot of the abundance teachers, a lot of manifestation teachers make everything sound like it happens instantaneously. And sometimes it does. And sometimes it does. And so we can be open to that and loving of that and expecting of that. But also sometimes mental discipline it's not, you don't learn the theory and then have it. It's a practice. Gratitude, it's not like the thing that you learn the theory and then you can do it. You have to practice some of these things. A lot of energy work is like going to the gym. It's muscle, like there's energetic muscles that we have. And that's another thing. I'm just going to rant for a second. So a lot of times like the manifestation teachers are teaching things and they make it sound so simple. Just choose a better thought or just hold a vibration of something. And they're teaching really advanced shit that requires a lot of energetic muscle and they never teach you how. And I find that to be super, super frustrating. And I felt like I was doing everything wrong for a long period of time. So I just want to make sure that everybody's got the gamut of expectations. All right. All right. So identify it. So this is the order to work on it. If you can't identify your scarcity, this is where to start. Acute scarcity, learning how to move scarcity through your body by moving your body. That's going to be the next thing to do. Practicing gratitude. I mean, you can practice gratitude every day. It's a great practice to have, but practicing gratitude. And if you're really working on creating abundance, I would, set a timer in your phone for 2-3 minutes a couple times a day. You don't need a ton of it. You don't need like long periods of time. A couple minutes is good enough. But a gratitude practice is really, it's a proactive mental discipline practice. So you're saying, hey, mind, we're going to work on this now. All right. Redirecting of the thoughts is a little harder than a gratitude practice for most people. So that's the fourth place to start to work. So you want to start to catch those thoughts right in the time, but this does require that you have good observational skills of the mind. And then the most advanced thing is to harness it. So one is going to be to face into the fear, and then the other is going to be to use that laser focus to go get your resources. So it's going to be to use the scarcity for what it's for. All right. So again, so I have spaces open for private clients and I have spaces open in Limitless Wealth. So Limitless Wealth is a hybrid coaching mastermind, like a one-on-one coaching mastermind style program. It's for women who own service-based businesses who are scaling. And private coaching is for basically anybody who wants to hire me to work with them on things like that. It's not, well, anyways. So private coaching, it's not for, I don't know exactly how to say it. I'm bumbling, but it's like I've had clients that have a ton of money and are scared to use it. I've had clients that hire me to help them get started with a business, to grow their business, to work with them and their spouse and how the money flows through their households. So anything money related, I guess. If you want to work with me on either of those ways, the first step is to book a private one-on-one session with me. We'll get to know each other. We'll get to see how coaching feels, and then we can talk about, working together from there. All right. So I think that's everything that I wanted to say today. So beautiful. So if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Every week a new video will come out.